Good morning, and welcome to the service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Helen O'Brien, and I will be your worship associate for this morning. Our lead minister, Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, is not in the pulpit today. Instead, we have two members of our congregation, Heidi Harley and Natasha Warner, who are both linguists and who will lead the service. We are glad that you are here. Our community is striving to become as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, whoever you are becoming, and whatever pronouns you prefer, I invite you to bring your whole self here now. Masks are not required in service or in our religious education space, but as you may know, COVID cases are high in Pima County. You're invited to wear a mask, of course, as you want or need, and we ask that if you were not well, that you join us from home on YouTube. I extend a special welcome to visitors and invite you to fill out a guest information card, which you'll find in the Welcome Center that is in Goddard Hall. We will meet for social hour after the service in Goddard Hall, which is out the doors that are to your left and across the patio and in through the big doors over there. We'll have coffee, iced tea, lemonade, and some snacks. And actually, I'm going to stick one of my announcements in right here. We're going to have a special snack this week because this week is Rodney Lowell's 95th birthday. And so there's a cake in his honor. Okay. So now we're going to move into a slightly more serious posture. And I have a call to worship. There is nothing you need to bring with you to be welcome here. No right beliefs or proof of citizenship. No eternal optimism or clarity of conviction, no boundless courage or endless expertise. You do not need to know what brought you here, or how you will solve that problem you are turning over and over in your mind. Your bills do not need to be paid, and your checkbook can be a mess. Your children may have been up half the night. Your hearing aids may not be working, and your knees may be creaking. You do not need to be already perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us. Where love resides in each of us, yet is somehow more than all of us. Where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, creating us and this day anew once again. Come, let us worship together.
We have a chalice lighting. If you will read with me, and Heidi will light the chalice. We light this chalice to ignite the divine spark of the universe, whose pronouns have always been plural, a co-creation of brilliance and diversity, a tapestry of souls perfected.
Martha Sandifar, the composer of the first song we're going to sing today, wrote the song for the group Work of the Weavers, a group founded to pick up the social activism through music of the original Weavers group, and the group received the blessing of the original Weavers. We'll sing the first two verses of We're Building a New Way. Would you stand and join as you are able? We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling strong.
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings. And also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. Let us remember those desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, the Yavapai, the Apache, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We bring to mind those who are seeking to provide access to water in the desert. We pour water from a plastic jug similar to the ones used by our ministry partner, No More Death. If you have a joy or sorrow to share aloud, I invite you to go to menti.com on your device and put in the code 41231277. Oh, good, they match. If you are here in the sanctuary and you want assistance to put your thoughts up on Menti, Brian Moon can help you do that. I invite those of you here in the sanctuary to come up to the table and create ripples of hope by putting a stone into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. Okay, and what do we have on Menti? Can we scroll up, I think? There we go. We're celebrating a new season of artistic creativity. Joy, my daughter, made a new friend in school last week. Joy for a beautiful sunny morning in the Sonoran Desert. That's from Steve Kranak. Celebrating a huge accomplishment at work, the fruit of a year-long process. Yay. Feeling a bit hopeful at the moment. Grateful for the visit from my cousins, but sad that they went back home. My joy is to be joining you today from Tacoma Park, Maryland. Thank you. Well, thank you. Joy for my daughter and all her peers starting college at U of A tomorrow. And joy that school is about to start and I get to start my educational journey at U of A. A sorrow summer break is over and I will have less free time to go to the pool and hang out with friends, etc. And for all those joys and sorrows left unsaid, I'll add 2 more stones.
Are you a boy or
Just
a
a
girl?
second, just a second. For the reading, we're about to play a recording of a performance of a poem by the author. And it does contain a couple of words that typically would not be said in a church, including the F word, and including a couple of words about bodies and body parts. So if this might be a problem, this is the time to either plug your ears or remove yourself from the room. Okay, so the poem.
Are you a boy or a girl? He asks, staring up from the all 3 feet of his pudding-faced grandeur, and I say, Dylan, you've been in this class for 3 years and you still don't know if I'm a boy or a girl? Well, then at this point, I really don't think it matters, do you? No. Can I have a push on the swing? And this happens every day. It's a tidal wave of kindergarten curiosity rushing straight for the rocks of me, whatever I am. In the class when we discuss the Milky Way galaxy, the orbit of the sun around the Earth, or whatever, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and kids, do you know that some of the stars we see when we look up in the sky are so far away they've already burned out? What do you think of that, Timmy? My mom says that even though you've got hairs that grow from your legs and that the hairs on your head grow short and pokey and that you smell really bad like my dad, that you're a girl. Thank you, Timmy. And so it goes. On the playground, she peers up from behind her pink Powerpuff sunglasses and asks, do you have a boyfriend? And I say, no. And she says, oh, do you have a girlfriend? And I say, no. But if by some miracle 20 years from now I ever finally do, then I'll definitely bring her by to meet you. How's that? Okay, can I have a push on the swing? And that's the thing. They don't care. They don't care. Us, on the other hand. My father sitting across the table at Christmas dinner, gritting his teeth over his still full plate, his appetite raped away by the intrusion of my haircut. What were you thinking? You used to be such a pretty girl. Frat boys drunk and screaming, leaning out the window of their daddy's SUVs. Hey, are you a faggot or a dyke? And I wonder what would happen if I met up with them in the middle of the night. Then there's always the somehow not quite bright enough fluorescent light of the public restroom. Sir, do you realize this is the ladies' room? Yes, ma'am, I do. It's just I didn't feel comfortable sticking this tampon at my penis in the men's room. But the best is always the mother at the market. The mother at the market. Sticking up her nose while pushing aside her child's wide eyes, whispering, don't stare, it's rude. And I want to say, listen, lady, the only rude thing I see is your paranoid parental hand pushing aside the best education on self that little girl's ever gonna get, living with your Maybelline lips, Stairmaster hips, synthetic kiwi, vanilla smelling beauty. So why don't you take your pinks and blues, your boy-girl rules, and shove them in that cart with your fucking issue of Cosmo, because tomorrow I start my day with 28 minds that know a hell of a lot more than you. And if I show up in a pink frilly dress, those kids won't love me any more or less. Hey, are you a boy or a... Oh, never mind. Can I have a push on the swing? And someday, when we grow up, it's all gonna be that simple.
It's hard to imagine doing anything except for sitting still after that. When Fred Small composed the song in 1983, it was at the request of a friend of his who was a lesbian mom. And in 2017, he considered trying to make the song, to take the song out of a gender binary and make it more inclusive. And then, which is an incredibly difficult thing of a song as beloved as this, and then gave up, realizing that there are many lyrics that are fairly inclusive in the song. If you don't know the song, if it's brand new to you, try to catch the chorus. We'll pass it by several times, and the words will be on the screen. It's 1019 in the thing, and because it is long, if you are able and choose, rise as you choose. Everything possible. We've cleared off the table
let's do the offertory. We'll stop. Okay. Sorry, we've got a slight difference between what the slide says and what our paper says, but we're on it. The offering is a sacrament of the free church. It is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hope and values. If you are joining us on live stream, you can send a check to the office or give online at uuctucson.org/donate. If you are here in person, the ushers will come around with the offering basket to collect your donations. And I want to make a special announcement regarding donations. We are still accepting donations to create the celebration of the ordination of the Reverend Pastor Jamili Omar, which will take place here on Saturday, September the 21st. Please make an effort, if you will, to go to our online place for donations, and then you can donate to the Pastor Jamili ordination. It's one of the choices on the little drop-down list. The reason for the push right here, right now, is that we are trying to make a plan for what all we can do. So, of course, with more money, we can have more fun. Well, no, we won't have more fun. We'll have fun anyway, but it'll be fancier. How's that? That's right. So anyway, we're going to pass baskets here in the service at this time.
Okay, I think we're moving on to the reading. This is a reading that I found as a social media post, so it was not published somewhere. The person wrote, and I'm keeping them anonymous, the person wrote, "But I just got my anonymous peer evaluations, and all of them got my pronouns right, parentheses, they, them, including my manager. I feel so seen and so heard. It's the little things. Please make an effort when someone has different pronouns than you expect. Thank you. I'm crying now." Next slide. Yeah. Today we're talking about honoring gender diversity through pronouns, and we're doing kind of a linguistic deep dive on this. So, the core message, when somebody has a name tag or whatever that says what their pronouns are, and maybe their pronouns are they, them, or maybe their pronouns are she, jem with an X, or maybe their pronouns are just something that you didn't expect given how they appeared. The core message about pronouns is that it's a person's right to self-determine how they are referred to. And we can relate this to a lot of our UU values. I looked at the list of 8 UU principles, and I can relate using someone's pronouns that they state they prefer. I can relate that to at least 5 out of the 8 UU principles. And I also looked at the new UU shared values list from Article 2. May as well use them both. And I can relate it to at least 4 of the shared UU values on Article 2. So using the pronouns that someone tells you are the right pronouns, feel like the right pronouns for them, is very much part of our UU values. And yet, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to use pronouns that you didn't expect or that you're not used to, especially to use they as a singular. And we're going to look today at why that's hard. Slide change.
So to find out why it's hard, we're going to have to tell you some fancy linguistic things about pronouns, so buckle up. All right, so you probably remember from grade school that pronouns stand in for noun phrases. And noun phrases contribute meaning to the sentence, but they contribute it in a very special way. So imagine I tell you the current King of England is bald. You can take that on board, agree with it, disagree with it. We can have a conversation about whether it's true or false. Now imagine that instead I say the current King of France is bald. Before we can even start talking about that, you probably have to correct me. There is no current King of France. And by saying that, I have presupposed that there is a current King of France. Noun phrases contribute their meanings as presuppositions, what linguists call presuppositions. It's part of the speaker's background information, the things that they assume that are true about the way the world is. Pronouns do the same thing. So if I say, he is hungry, I am presupposing that the person I'm referring to is male. And in order to engage with that statement, if my gender that I have presupposed is incorrect, you have to question my understanding of the way the world is. You have to challenge my presupposition. And so it's partly because pronoun content is a presupposition that it's sort of insidious. When you misgender somebody and you get corrected, it's like they're challenging your whole worldview, your whole set of assumptions about the way the world is. And that's very challenging for anybody to have questioned. It's also why it's so upsetting for the misgendered person. It's because that person I'm talking to or about has presupposed something about me that's not true. Slide, please. All right, so up here we have the sort of textbook English pronoun system. It's a pretty complex system. It has differences in person, so the person who's speaking, the first person, the person who's being spoken to, the second person, and third people who are not in the conversation, that's the third person pronouns. And it distinguishes singular and plural, so I versus we. Now, what I especially want you to notice is that in the third person, we have a giant mess of forms in the third person singular. So when we refer to a third person who's not in the conversation, but there's just one of them, now we have to choose between she, her, he, him, his, it, its. Okay? There's a lot going on, and as English speakers, you've all mastered that system. In the plural, you don't have to make any of those choices. Your choices depend on other things, but they don't depend on gender in any way. So that's important, okay? Third person forms in English depend on gender, but only in the singular. Okay.
New slide. Let's take a look at some other languages, though, besides English, because English is not the whole world. About 2/3 of the world's languages what linguists call don't mark gender on pronouns, don't make any difference between gender on pronouns. So 2/3 of the world. Mutsun, a Native American language that I work with in California, wak means he, she, or it. Mandarin, I'm not going to say these ones because I don't speak these other languages. Mandarin has one word that covers he, him, she, her, and it. You might sometimes hear native Chinese speakers mixing up he and she in their English, and this is why. Yeah, and a bunch of other languages we showed here also do not make any difference between he and she in their pronouns, even though they do make some other differences that English doesn't make. Sometimes we might, so in English, we have this issue that our pronouns presuppose whether the person is male or female. And sometimes we might want to talk about somebody in English without presupposing gender, just like these other languages can. And so if we want to do that, we've come up with a solution in modern times where we use they as a singular that doesn't specify gender. Next slide. But even though it's our modern solution for not showing someone's gender, singular they is actually old. Singular they has been in English for a very long time, at least since Shakespeare. Shakespeare, in Comedy of Errors, wrote, "There's not a man I meet but doth salute me, as if I were their well-acquainted friend." There is referring to a man, singular. Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, writes, "Arise, one knocks. Hark, how they knock." They is referring to one. The King James Bible, "So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if ye from your hearts forgive not every one his brother their trespasses." So there is singular also there. So singular they has been around a long time. Next slide.
So as we've just seen, singular they has been around for a long time, and we all use it, and it commonly goes unnoticed. And linguists are very interested in this, and linguists have detected that there are several different categories of singular they. So there's the kind that Shakespeare used, the bound variable they. Everyone said that they like spaghetti. Goes down pretty smoothly. Few people have a reaction to that one. Then there are these kind of ones where the antecedent of the pronoun, the person the pronoun's referring to, isn't known, and you just use they to refer to them. I'll only read one of these. This middle one is an example from Reddit. And interestingly, the gender is likely known in this example, but the person still says they. The subject is indefinite and unspecified. So if a friend of mine, unspecified, got pregnant, now we suddenly have an opinion about the gender of the person. Abortion wouldn't be the first thing I'd suggest if she asked for help. But if that's what they wanted to do, I wouldn't try to convince them otherwise. So here the person switches back and forth between she and they, and it's pretty smooth. Even for us older speakers of English, it doesn't bother us too much. Then there's a couple other kinds, which I won't go into. And then at the very bottom, we have the kind that's triggering. This is a case where you have a singular, definite antecedent whose identity is known to the speaker, maybe even using a proper name to refer to them. Here's the sentence. Jenny said they just love it when people get their pronouns right. That's the one that people of my generation and older find is a clash. The they here feels plural, and we know that the antecedent is singular, and so we get a feeling about it. So the question is, why is this triggering? Why is this new use of they triggering? Slide.
And here we have some nice science-y stuff. A scatter plot from an experiment where they asked people to rate whether they thought sentences were perfectly good sentences of English or not possible sentences of English or kind of iffy sentences of English. And on the left you're seeing what happens when you use they with a particular individual's name, like Jenny, like the example we just had. Jenny said that they, blah, blah, blah. And what you can see on the left is a big change with age. Young people are on the far left, and they think it sounds great. Older people around age 60 and 70 are on the right there, and they don't think it sounds great. They think it sounds awful. So that one is a real change that is happening in the language right now, a language change that's going on right now. They and the other usages that we looked at, all those other examples we looked at, is not changing that much right now. On the right-hand part, you can see that even older people think that those other usages of singular they sound just fine. So we are seeing a change happening in the language, but only on using singular they for a specific person with their name.
Slide, please. But change in our pronoun system has happened before. So this is a representation of the Old English pronoun system. If you were living in 900 AD, King of Time Alfred, these would be the pronouns you would use. A little bit more complex of a system, but not that much. And as in modern English, the plural pronouns do not mark gender. Only the singular pronouns do. Furthermore, I'd like you to notice that the word for she, which at the time was heo, he, heo, hie, that word was the same as the word for they. So in Old English, there was a singular pronoun that sounded just like they. She and they were the same word. This is, if you know any modern German, this is the way modern German works. The singular feminine pronoun and the plural pronoun are the same word. So that's kind of interesting, right? So, in a way, we could be going back to Old English with our new use of they as a singular form. But still, we'd like to understand why it's so triggering for those of us of a certain generation. Really, this whole talk is just for those of us of a certain generation. The younger people in the crowd already use singular they in this context and don't mind. So this is for you guys, you younger people. It's a reminder to be kind to your older people who are freaking out when you do this and like, I can't cope. All right, slide, please. So now we can ask, why is this change so triggering for those of us who have the older system that lacks this use of singular they to refer to a definite known antecedent? Well, there's three kind of factors that we can point to. Number one is that language change is triggering. It's really tough as you get older to hear people using language in new ways that were not familiar to you. You're even inclined to think that they are wrong. So you hear somebody say literally to mean really, you're gonna go, that's not what that means, but too bad, it is what it means. You just have to, adjust. Language change is bothersome, and that's true for all generations. The next reason that we can point to is that pronouns are highly frequent grammatical words that you have used your entire life. And so they are very deeply embedded in your language system. You use them without thinking, you use them unconsciously, and you deploy them automatically. So it's just really hard to switch. He is the 11th most frequent word of the English language. 11th most frequent. And now all of a sudden we're being asked to think consciously about using he. Whoa. Normally you've gone, for me anyway, 54 years of your life, and you've never once thought consciously about using he. So that's the second reason. The third reason is this aspect that we hit on in the first part, which is that pronouns express presuppositions. So they just come out naturally, indicating the way you think the world is in terms of gender of referent. And to be questioned or told that you're wrong is kind of face challenging because it questions not the truth of your statement, but your categorization of the world, your view of the way the world is. And that's quite challenging. So those are three reasons why switching your pronoun usage is triggering. Okay?
We wanted to address objections that people often bring up to using singular they. And maybe you've already made your peace with all of these objections, but just in case, or the next time somebody gives you this objection so you can answer, one thing that a lot of people say about singular they is, well, it'll be confusing. Then I won't know whether people mean one person or several people. And that is true, that can happen. Ambiguity is all over the place in language, not just in singular they. There are possible confusions all over the place. And an actual conversation happened at my house a couple of weeks ago where we did get a confusion from singular they. And what I want to demonstrate is how quickly and easily we fixed it, the confusion. So this happened at my house. George, who is over there, was at my house. And we were talking about my son's partner, who's named Ellie, who uses they, them pronouns. And I said, this is by memory, so it's not exactly what we said, but I said something like, the kids came over for dinner. Ellie came from their job at the aquaponics lab. They brought us some lettuce from the lab. And George said, oh, do they both work at the aquaponics lab now? And I said, no, remember, Ellie uses they, them pronouns. Just Ellie works at the aquaponics lab. And George said, oh yeah, okay, so how was the lettuce? It was very interesting lettuce, by the way. Yeah. So yes, confusions can happen with singular they, but confusions can happen all over the place in language, and when they do, we have ways of straightening them out quickly, and they don't really cause a big problem, because language in general is ambiguous. One specific other place that's just like the singular they versus plural they confusion is the word you, because you can mean just one person, Jody, or it can mean all of you, the whole congregation. And when I say something like, are you coming? It can be confusing whether I'm referring to just the one person I'm looking at or the group. And we solve that all the time without noticing. And it's the exact same grammatical confusion as we get with singular they. Next slide.
Another objection that some grammatical pedants have brought up is that, well, if it's singular, then we should be using the singular verb form with it. We should say they is, not they are. And they think they've got you. But they don't got you. And you can point them to the linguists to explain why not. What's going on is that verb agreement, which is not semantically important, verb agreement is agreement with grammatical features, not semantic features. So we have noun phrases that refer to groups that are singular. We say, the committee is meeting tonight. That's a reference to a plural group of people, but it wants singular is. In American English anyway, not in British English. We can talk about that separately. Another case is there are nouns in English that are grammatically plural, even though semantically they're number neutral. They might be singular or plural. So undies is like this. The undies are in the drawer. You don't say the undies is in the drawer when you're just talking about one, because undies is grammatically plural, so it wants grammatical plural verb agreement even when it refers to just one. So it's grammatical number, not semantic number. Using singular they plus the, quote, plural are when you're using they as the singular is just the same as using you are when you're using you to just refer to one. It's the grammatical number feature, not the semantic number feature, that matters for verb agreement. Thanks.
Let's take a quick look at how other languages that have gender marking on their pronouns, that show gender in their pronouns, how other languages are handling this need to be able to talk about some people without saying male or female. This need to make language non-binary when we want to. So Spanish has a much bigger problem than English does with this, because in Spanish, gender, male or female, is marked on practically all of the nouns and adjectives. So things like Latina versus Latino, and then you're left there going, well, what if somebody is not male or female? What am I going to use? And there have been a couple of proposals coming from Spanish-speaking communities, both in this country and in Spanish-speaking, Spanish-predominant countries. And one of the proposals is Latinx, written with an X letter instead of O or A. And another one is Latine, pronounced like Latino or Latina, but with an A instead of an A or O. And this is not settled yet. Some people feel very strongly that they like Latinx and they don't like Latine. Some people feel very strongly the other way, that they really dislike Latinx. Which communities are using these is very much in shift right now. And some people feel like both Latine and Latinx work fine, and it's more or less pick one or the other, it doesn't matter. Or you could say Hispanic, and that's another thing, yeah. And this also comes up like on niño, niña, and on the adjectives describing these, and so on. So Spanish is also finding a solution for this. Japanese is interesting because they have distinct words for he and she, pronouns, but they almost never use them anyway. They normally refer to people by their name, or they just leave it out and leave it to context. And that's not to try to make things gender neutral, it's just how the language works and did all along. So I asked a Japanese friend of mine about this issue about non-gendered ways to refer to people, and he said, well, it doesn't really matter that much in Japanese because we don't have to use the pronouns. So yeah, that's another solution. German is also interesting because like Spanish, it marks gender on a lot of nouns. And they've found an interesting solution. So Mitarbeiter means a male colleague. Mitarbeiterin means a female colleague. And when they want to say it could be either male or female, like for fairness in job advertising, or when they want to say non-gendered, then they've taken to putting an asterisk before the IN. So Mitarbeiterin now means male or female, or probably also non-binary colleague. Another thing that people sometimes bring up with English when they have a hard time with singular they is they say, well, if people don't want to be referred to by he or she, they should make a new word instead of using one that we're already used to using for plural, because it's hard to shift something that we're already used to using in that grammatical way. They should make a new word. And some people have. These are called neopronouns. So some of you may know someone who has used j'aime, spelled with an X. J instead of he or she, j'aime instead of him or her. Or another one is am, so like they, them, but with no th. And these are neopronouns that people have constructed to make a new pronoun system for English that doesn't specify gender. And these are in use. Some people, these are their pronouns they like to use. But they have not caught on the way that singular they has. Maybe because singular they actually already has been part of our language all the way since Shakespeare. It's just using it in a new environment.
Slide, please. Just very quickly to note that this discussion, although it seems very technical and linguistic, has real-world consequences. Pronouns are part of the culture wars. So state legislatures are enacting laws to restrict how their employees can use pronouns. And in Florida, there's a law that I know about only because I'm a member of the Linguistic Society of America. In fact, I'm the current vice president of the Linguistic Society of America. And we have submitted an amicus brief. In this particular case, a teacher is bringing suit because the state is trying to force her to use he, him pronouns or not use pronouns or some other very awkward thing. And she uses she, her pronouns. So the Florida law says a person's sex is an immutable biological trait, and it is false to ascribe to a person a pronoun that does not correspond to such person's sex. And I hope that this talk has convinced you that not only is this an ethically wrong statement, it's a scientifically wrong statement. It's not false. It's just a presupposition. Presuppositions can't be false or true. Sentences containing erroneous presuppositions can't be false or true. You have to challenge the presupposition. So I'm very proud that the Linguistic Society of America has submitted this amicus brief in support of the teacher who is trying to change this law, and fingers crossed it goes well.
So you have a problem with immutable biological trait? Those three words?
No, I mean, I personally, it's the challenge is coming from a trans teacher who presents as female and who teaches her students to refer to her as her, she, Ms., using female titles and so on. And she's been teaching for 2 years with no issues. And the state has forced her to change the way she self-presents. So, and the reason that the state is ascribing to argue in favor of this law, this requirement to force this teacher to refer to themselves as teacher Wood instead of Ms. Wood, and to refer to themselves as, well, I don't know, they're not forcing he, him, but they're forcing them not to say she, her. This law says it's false to use a pronoun that doesn't refer to your immutable biological characteristics. And the piece that we are really engaged in arguing about is not whether or not there are immutable biological characteristics. Other pieces of the law, or other pieces of the legal case, are addressing that. The part that we are addressing is whether it's false to say she of Ms. Wood. It's not false to use she.
So you don't want the kids to call the teacher he?
I want the kids, the amicus brief says the kids should call the teacher in the way that is natural to call the teacher, which is the way that the teacher says, please call me Ms. Wood, call me she, her. She doesn't have to actually do this because she presents as female. So everybody does that naturally. The state actually wants her to change, to start off her every moment of class time with saying, remember children, although I look like a female person, please don't call me she. Please don't call me Miss Wood. Call me Teacher Wood. And so part of the case is actually that because of this law, this teacher is being forced to spend huge quantities of class time explaining why she should not be called she.
These kids are going to know, just because this person's wearing a dress, these kids are going to know about that.
Let's talk about this afterwards if you're willing to, okay?
No, I think we can talk afterwards. It'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, it gets a little detailed about what the linguistic objection is. I am very proud that Heidi is the president-elect of the Linguistic Society of America and is active in doing this. I want to turn now a little to personal experience rather than, we've talked a lot about groups of people who are sort of in the abstract out there. I'm going to turn a little to personal experience. So I've been identifying as non-binary or as agender since age 53, which is only 2 years ago. And 53 is kind of on the late side to think about these things. But we didn't have words for this when I was in high school. We didn't. Or categories for this. Now, having decided this, that I really fit better with non-binary or agender at 53, after spending 53 years being referred to as she and her, I don't feel a need for anybody to change my pronouns. I'm fine with she and her. Continuing on. Sometimes I put she/they, but that doesn't mean I need people to use they. But on the other hand, gendered nouns, I absolutely hate being referred to with miss, ma'am, ladies, girls, ooh. Sometimes I get referred to or addressed as sir, and I love it. Not because I want to be a guy or think I'm a guy, I'm not, but because I like being ambiguous enough that people don't really know. So with each person who is non-binary or agender or whatever, They may choose that they want you to use they, them to refer to them, and that may matter a great deal to them, and they really don't want to hear she or he. Or they may not, like me. And so like everything else, this is sort of a whatever works with that person sort of a question. But I wanted to point out that if you're thinking about this as about respect for abstract large groups of people out there in the world somewhere, it's also someone you know. The bottom line conclusion on all of this is that using people's choice of pronouns is about respect. It's part of our UU values. And yet, there are good reasons why it's sometimes hard for us to get used to. But because it's part of our UU values, it's worth doing the work to get used to, even though we know there are good reasons why it's sometimes hard. Next slide, whatever it is, yeah.
And I don't know if we'll be singing our kids in today or not, but we will sing the gratitude song. We are grateful for the endless blessings we receive beyond what we could have conceived. For this journey that led us here, and this path to follow of a love so dear.
Hooray for she, he, ze, and they. Written by Linz Amir and illustrated by Kit Alizada. What are your pronouns today? Hi friend, I'm Linz, and my pronouns are they, them. What are your pronouns today? What's a pronoun, you ask? Well, everyone has pronouns. We use pronouns to tell people about our gender. Gender is that tingly feeling inside that tells you who you are and how you want to express yourself in the world. You can express your gender in lots of different ways, like through your clothes or your hairstyle or your pronouns. There are different pronouns that help us express our gender. There are he's and there are she's. There are theys, there are z's and here's and fays and pers. Use whichever feels right to you, because the right pronouns feel super cool, totally awesome, amazingly wonderful, just like you. When someone uses your right pronoun, it feels like pulling on your favorite sweater that fits just right, or like a warm hug from your favorite person when you're lonely. It's like when you get to sit at your favorite seat at lunch, or when your cup of hot cocoa is just hot enough to sip on a cold day. Or when you find your best stuffed friend after you thought they were lost forever. It's like remembering which toothbrush is yours, or belting your favorite song at the top of your lungs, or when your grown-up makes your favorite food for dinner. It makes you want to do cartwheels through the playground, jump so high on your grown-up's bed that you can touch the ceiling, and throw a dance party with all your friends. My pronouns make me feel like me. Super cool, totally awesome, amazingly wonderful, me. What pronouns do you use? Do he and him feel as cozy as sleeping under a million blankets? Do she and her feel like smiling so much that your cheeks might fall off? Do they and them feel like you can jump so high you can say hello to the moon and the stars? Or maybe you want to use something totally different. Or maybe you don't know your pronouns yet. That's okay too. But whatever pronouns you choose, they should make you feel like you. Super cool, totally awesome, amazingly wonderful, you. So what do you say? What are your pronouns today?
Here's our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this chalice today, but we are illuminated by a faith that allows us to sit and think. In this quiet time, we can reflect in solitude, meditating on love and growing out of our comfort. Though we experience discomfort, we are excited to give birth to a new, just world.